Good morning, crypto Twitter, it's Misty Crypto, spreading crypto with doctors showing its benefits to my generation. Shout out to all my people, Jesse needs to be included, it's really that simple. We are savage, amazed, boss, SD, making money at the same time, spread peace. I feel empty if you don't include Gen Z, about to change the world, so y'all better get ready. Misty Crypto, I'm never backing down, I got a wax account, you should say it out. So many NFTs, I think I lost count, and I'm only getting started. Yeah, I'm barely off the ground. Listing crypto, you cannot stop me. My hands are making diamonds, your hands fall like gold without me. Never be the boss of me. Bitcoin's all I need. When I say I'm zesty, that's just me talking honestly. Crypto and yum farm marketplace. I wanna see the more. We gotta go through cyberspace. Leave this world without a trace. Say pay for a different day, 'cause we partners in the cryptos didn't stay.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Miss Teen Crypto Show. I hope everybody's having a lovely day today. Guys, we have an amazing guest, but we have to hold on for 1 second because if you're new to the channel, hi, my name is Randy. It's so nice to meet you. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share this stream out with friends so we can get more people in to meet today's guest and feel the good vibes. Before we jump in, I'm going to say thank you to Wax Blockchain for sponsoring today's show. Absolutely cool people, good things going on in that ecosystem. Make sure to check them out in Blockchain Brawlers coming up. Thank you to everyone in the chat that's attending. I'm going to waste no time. I want to talk to today's awesome guest, none other than Charles Payne. Welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
You're amazing, Charles. Every day you're on Fox Biz, wearing an amazing suit, jamming out to music. I'm just happy you took out the time today. How has your day been? How was the show?
The show, I give today's show a B+.
Really?
A B+, yeah.
Why?
Which is good. I'm a tough grader, so B+
Okay.
is good for me. I love one part. I love two segments. One segment we did, I love teaching.
Yes.
I love educating the audience. So, you know, for right now, the Federal Reserve is wreaking havoc over everything, wrecking the economy. They say they have no other choice to slow down inflation. And of course, the big question mark coming into this year was whether or not Jay Powell, the head of the Fed, had the chutzpah, had the nerve to go all the way to really wreck this economy, a la Paul Volcker. So the big debate has been, can Powell be Paul Volcker 2.0? And now more recently, as the data is piling up here, the question is maybe this shouldn't be about the 1970s and the mistakes that were made by the Fed then. Maybe this could be the 1930s, right? Where you had a recession that became a Great Depression, and many people believe it was because of the fault of the Federal Reserve. So today I took a walk down history, and ironically, I was able to use Ben Bernanke, the former Fed chair who won a Nobel Prize yesterday, for doing research on the 1930s in policy. And I had a great guest, Nomi Prinz. We went through it, the 4 big mistakes that the Fed made. And here's the thing, it's eerily similar to what's happening right now. We had a housing boom and a stock market boom in 1927. So the Fed decided to slow the economy in 1928. And it kept slowing, it kept making money harder to get. And guess what happened in 1929? We had the big, most famous Wall Street crash in history.
Yep.
And then they made another series of mistakes. So it took a recession, or what should have been almost a garden variety recession, and turn it into the Great Depression. And so, you're going to hear more people talk about, you're going to hear the number 1930 a lot if you toggle around financial TV. But I thought I'd take it a step further and exactly explain not only the parallels, but the exact mistakes that the Fed made back then so people can pay attention for themselves.
Wow. So, guys, if you were watching Fox Business at 2 p.m. Eastern today, then you took a walk down memory lane or history lane with Charles Payne and the history of the Federal Reserve and previous recessions. I'm going to jump into that later, but I want to take a walk down history lane with you, Charles. I want to know more about you and how you got started in life. What were you up to in college? What was a Charles Payne in college doing? What did you want to do with your life?
I went to the military to go to school. So
No.
It was a little bit different. It was a little bit different. we didn't have a campus or anything. I lived on the base. Well, except in Guam. I lived off base in Guam.
Wow.
But my whole stock market adventure, if you will, began a lot earlier than that.
Oh, explain.
Yeah. So I had two childhoods. My first childhood is I grew up on Army bases around the world. Every year we moved. It was amazing. I thought it was wonderful. I was born in New York. Then we lived in Pittsburgh. Then we lived in Texas. Then we lived in Germany, back to Pittsburgh. Then we lived in Japan, Texas, Alabama, North Carolina, Virginia.
Oh.
And all of these places were wonderful, amazing, different people, different atmospheres. But living on military bases, particularly back then, was just like idyllic. It was just, particularly in the 60s and 70s, we had a lot of social upheaval in this country. The civil rights movement was going on. Now, I was sheltered from a lot of that. I didn't see a lot of that. I didn't see, a lot of what was going on in real America, to be quite frank with you. And from racism to poverty, I never knew any of that stuff, really.
Yeah.
Like one of my first best friends was a white kid. I love to run into him. His name was Randy Helms. I'm gonna look him up one day. But it was just like one of these beautiful things. But it was sort of an oasis. And then one day I came home from school and my mom said, "We're leaving." So me and my mom and my two younger brothers got on a Greyhound bus. I think it was Greyhound or Trailways. Fort Lee, Virginia, where we lived in a 2-story house. I had my own room. We had the staircase just like the Brady Bunch. It was a beautiful existence. We never locked the doors, played all day. And all four of us got on the bus with no money. And we left that and we went to Harlem. This was in the early 1970s when Harlem was the most dangerous, poorest neighborhood in America.
Wow.
So we went from this amazing existence to all four of us living inside of a room. And it was tough. It was tough financially, social economically, the crime. It's so interesting to watch people talk about crime. It's getting bad, no doubt about it, but we're still not at levels that I had to see for myself firsthand. Despair. And at the same token, there was a different type of energy too. Like my very first day we got there. So we got off the train. First of all, for me, a subway train blew my mind. Like this iron thing, this big iron train picked us up. I'm like, what the hell? It was so amazing to come out the train station and walking down the first neighborhood we lived, walking down the block. The music everywhere. Music, just in windows, in cars driving by, in boom boxes. It was, and songs I never heard these songs before. Like, who the hell is Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes? Where you been? So then I saw girls double dutching. Like, what the hell is that? Like, it was so beautiful. So there was a beautiful side with energy I never felt before. And then there was this extremely dangerous, scary side. And then on top of that was the poverty side we never experienced before. We never knew about that. So we lived with my mom's friend for a while, all four of us inside the room. We finally got our own apartment in Harlem, but it was in central Harlem. It was really bad.
Yeah.
We went our first winter without heat or hot water. So I was the oldest, and I just figured, I got to find out how to make some money.
Yeah.
I would go out and hustle. The first hustle I had was paper towels and Windex. I go to stoplights or traffic lights and clean people's windows and hope they would tip me. Then I did get a job in a bodega, and that was rough. Oh my God, that was rough. I had a crowbar. They were trying to punk me every single day. It was like a fight every day. I was scared as hell all day long, every day. And then eventually I just kind of told myself, you know what? The stock market.
Wow.
Because I think everyone equates wealth or money with the stock market.
Yes.
Yeah. So when I was around 13, I started reading the Wall Street Journal. And let me tell you something. Go back and look at a Wall Street Journal from 1974, 1975. It's nothing but lines and numbers. It took me so long to figure this thing out. Like, I'm looking, I didn't even know, I had it upside down, sideways. I thought I needed a decoder ring. It was like, what the hell is this, But I kept getting them. I kept reading them. I kept studying them. Then I started to kind of pick up on it, and I started reading different stories. So when I was 14, I told my mom, I said, I'm going to work on Wall Street.
Dang, you were 14?
Yeah, 14.
Wow.
And I remember calling my dad and telling him I'm going to work on Wall Street. He was like, man, I saw it on TV. Ain't no black people down there. Bunch of white guys throwing paper in the air. Ain't no black people.
Oh my
So the
God.
only person who really, really believed in me was my mom. Like nobody, no neighbors, no teachers, no one, just my mom. And, I just kept studying this. And when I was 17, I bought my first mutual fund. She had to co-sign because I wasn't 18. And
Oh.
when I was 18, when I was 17, I joined the Air Force. And my first base outside of training in Lackland was in Minot, North Dakota. And they had a Dean Witter office there. Dean Witter was an old firm. It was a relatively big firm. And I went there and I opened my first account, and I bought my first stock when I was 18. A company called MCI. And the reason I picked MCI, and I've been reading articles about the founder. And this guy, I love him. You talk about chutzpah. He was taking on the largest corporation in the world, AT&T at the time. And how was he doing it? He was piggybacking off of people's TV antennas. And back in the day, you didn't have cable TV. You had antennas on your roof.
Yep.
And he was somehow linking all of those to create a communications company to go after. This is the ultimate David and Goliath story. And the stock did well. I made a lot of money on that stock. And so, I already knew I wanted to do that. My first stock was a success. And so when I got out of the Air Force, I went down to Wall Street and got a job at E.F. Hutton. That's on the analytical side of the business.
That is insane. What a story. And working in that bodega, what was probably like, the scariest thing you've experienced? It was every day there were fights. I know some bodegas now have things locked up, and that's something that a lot of people are doing now in the city.
Yeah, no, we didn't have that. The plexiglass or the bulletproof glass. It was scary because, they would just, every day they would come in and take stuff and try to pump me. I was definitely different. You could tell I wasn't, from there, and so they took advantage of me. I've had to fight people. Like I said, I had my crowbar. It was the ultimate. I was getting bullied every single day,
So wild.
It was tough. It was tough.
And did you serve? Did you ever end up getting deployed in the Air Force?
No, I was a policeman in the Air Force. I worked on all these. Back then they had this thing called SAC, Strategic Air Command. So it was the most intense of all the air. People in other branches kind of snicker when you say Air Force and intense in the same sentence. But but anyway, I worked at all nuclear bases. In North Dakota, it was the Minuteman missiles. In fact, if North Dakota was a state, it'd be like the third most powerful country in the world. If it was a country. Between Fargo and Minot, all the nuclear missiles that we have there. And then my next base after that was Guam, where we have a lot of nuclear. Well, we have the nuclear missiles there. We have all the bombs in North Dakota and all the missiles. And you should see how many missiles we've got in Guam. It's just, I don't think people would understand how much. And we always have 2 planes ready to go at all times to fly. Right now, ostensibly to Russia with nuclear bombs on them. We've got this thing called the triad system that we've had from the beginning, the nuclear age, where it's a deterrent. It's mostly been against Russia, which is our real nuclear rival, although I'm sure China's getting there soon. And it's submarines, missiles, and the bombs, the Minutemen that come out the ground. So theoretically, if we ever went to war, they always felt like Russia would annihilate the Minuteman missiles. So that's where I was in North Dakota. You can imagine some of the early nightmares I had when I learned that. And then of course, the missiles, some of those bombers would get off the ground, but ultimately we'd be able to counter any attack with the nuclear subs. So it was interesting for me though. The best part was just meeting so many different people from so many different parts of the country. I went to school while I was in the Air Force, and that really was kind of crazy because it was essentially free, and none of my friends went. Hardly no one took advantage of it, So, I'd be off the class, and everybody would be at the grill and having the brews, and all right, man, you're missing out. I get off of class and give me an hour. I caught up, So I don't know. It's kind of interesting.
You had a work ethic to you. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think that's extremely interesting. What is like a nuclear weapon even look like? What does a missile even look like? Is that like really big?
Well, the Minutemen are tall. They're really tall. Very intimidating. Very, 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 very intimidating. And the missiles are beautiful. They're sleek. I mean, they're beautiful too. They're just, but the Minutemen are just like, it's just sitting in the silo ready to go. And you just know that thing can annihilate an entire city. It's something else to see.
I can't even imagine what kind of catastrophic damage this can all cause. Nuclear war, as a topic that's being brought up so often now as if it's normal, it hurts my heart a little bit. Let's get back to your story though. So you actually were in school during the Air Force. You were buying stocks. How was that journey for you? How did you choose your first stock, and why did you choose that one and continue on this road? What kept you in the stock market?
Well, the first stock was at MCI, and I picked it because I fell in love with the founder. And I think I've always kind of been in love with these renegades, and I think that's why I've always been sympathetic, like for instance, the meme movement and the criticism that, even today, I won't buy a stock unless I really know management very well. And first and foremost, I've got to believe the management. It helps if, they have a great track record of execution, developing products, delivering them, hitting their numbers, those kind of things. But I've always been interested in learning about management first and foremost. So that was my first stock. And then, the thing is, I got out of the Air Force. I got out a little after 4 years. I had my daughter. I got married. I had a daughter, and I started the cycle all over again. It was me, my wife, and my daughter in a room, not an apartment, but in a room. And this was in a rougher neighborhood of Harlem, a rougher part of Harlem, Lenox Avenue. And it was the same story all over again. And I went downtown. I had $1,000 saved up from the Air Force, which, by the way, represented taking only one vacation the whole time I was in there. And, it was like a lot of money to me back then. So, I got a job at this firm I told you, E.F. Hutton, which was very famous. It was probably the number 6 firm, but it was poorly run. And it was there where, I learned a lot. Unfortunately, I was an assistant, research, compliance. It wasn't, I had a foot in the door, right? But I always tell people, if you looked at the organizational chart, you go to the very beginning at the top with the CEO, and then you go all the way down to the bottom, and then you flip it over. And that was my name right there. So I was at the very bottom of the totem pole. But what's great about it is people always talk to me. Like, I would go to these different desks and ask questions, and they would say, "Come here, kid, let me show you." Yeah, this is called the so-and-so, and this is the so-and-so. And I was just there absorbing all of it, just listening and absorbing all of it. And, but it was going to take a long time through E.F. Hutton for me to be able to, finish going to school, get my degree, and for them to sponsor me to be a broker. So I had a friend who worked at a small boutique firm, and she introduced me to the manager, and they said they would sponsor me for the test, but they would not help me. The only thing is I had to do everything myself, so I said, okay, I want to do it, so they said, okay, we'll sponsor you. And I was working my job at E.F. Hutton. I was working a part-time job doing microfiche work, and I was trying to study.
That's insane.
So I had a buddy who was actually taking a course, because there was I don't know if they still have them, but they had a lot of these places down in town back in the day where, they get you ready for the Series 7. And so, I had no money. I couldn't afford any of that stuff. But one day he said, "Come with me to the class." I said, "Oh, they won't mind." They didn't mind because they saw me as a future prospect, a future student. So he said, "Come on in." This was a Wednesday. So I came in with the guy, and they gave a lot of study, a lot of practice exams, and I was getting 73s, 76s, those kind of scores. And the guy looked at it and said, "The test is Saturday. Listen, we're looking at your scores, so more than likely you're not going to pass, but you should take our course." And I just looked at the guy and just smiled. My man, in the back of my mind, I said, "My man, you do not know me." My man, you think I'm a foul? I just looked at him like, okay, sure, okay, absolutely. I called in sick the next 2 days. I went to my mother's apartment because she had a big kitchen table. Because remember, we lived in a room.
Yeah.
So she had a big kitchen table. I just took all the study material, spread it out, study. Took the test Saturday, a 6-hour test. Only one person finished before me. One. I crushed it.
Oh, dang.
So I walked out of there, and it was downtown, where the only place you could take the test back then was a place, Murray Bertram High School in Lower Manhattan. So it was near Wall Street. I walked to the office with the manager who sponsored me. He worked that Saturday. And he's like, "How did you do?" I said, "I passed." He said, "All right, well, let's wait for the results." I'm like, "Nah, I passed." And on the way over there, as I walked from where I took the test to the office, I was singing this Stevie Wonder song called "Overjoyed." I'm not sure if you've ever heard of it.
I definitely have, yeah.
There's a line in there that goes, "And though the odds say improbable, what do they know?" And that's why I love that song. So I sang that song all the way over because I knew I passed the test. And I was going to become a broker.
That's insane. So how old were you at this point when you became a broker? You passed your test. You were singing your song on the yellow brick road.
Yeah, I think 22 or 23.
Still super young. And you were working basically on Wall Street. What was it like to be working at 22 on Wall Street? And would you change anything about maybe your investing strategy or the way you went about things if you were able to go back now?
Well, sure. I would if I could go back with the knowledge I have now. But, all of that's part of the journey, too. So, a lot of the lessons I learned the hard way, or I had to learn them. You just some of the mistakes you make, you're going to have to make. You can read all you want, you can prep all you want, but you just got to get in the ring. It's like being a boxer. You have all the natural talent in the world. Watch film, videos, have a great coach, but you got to work your way up. You're not going to go for the championship fight right out the gate. So back then it was amazing. It was so amazing. Oh my goodness, the energy. When that subway train would stop at the Wall Street stop and those doors would open, there were times I don't even remember moving my feet. Like it was so many people. And you got to remember, pre-internet, you had to work on Wall Street.
Yeah.
You had to. There was no alternative. You weren't going to be a hedge fund manager, out of Butte, Montana. Like you had to work on Wall Street. You had to go to certain clubs and bars on Wall Street to get the wink, wink, inside scoop and all that kind of stuff. And so you just, the way you felt. Now, my first year, I made $13,000 a year before taxes. But you couldn't tell me the thrill I got, though, and that was on the analytical side. On the brokerage side, I had nothing because I was 100% commission.
Yeah.
But just working down there just felt so powerful. Oh, it was so amazing.
Wow. Working on Wall Street. I know I went to Wall Street over the summer and I was trying to talk to some Wall Street bros on the street about Bitcoin. They always look like they're hustling and bustling. They're so busy all the time. But working on Wall Street pre-internet had to be really zesty, because I know right now I could just invest myself. I could go on Robinhood. I could go on Coinbase, buy whatever crypto I want. But then how it worked then is what would have to happen for me to buy a stock? I'm just curious. I would have to call you like a broker, and then you would have to make the trade for me and then just tell me it's done and send me a receipt. How did that work?
You're right. We'd make the trade for you, and it was very expensive. About 300. I think we charged 300, 350 each ticket each way.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So you had to invest a large amount to want to even get involved, right?
You really did. You really did. Yeah.
Ooh. So what were the popular hot stocks? What was the Apple or the Google when you first started?
Just mostly the same kind of old school Coca-Cola kind of names. You know, the Bristol Myers of the world. The whole tech thing hadn't started just yet.
Yeah.
Because with the technology names and the biotech names and Biogen, Amgen, there was another revolution. It gets kind of lost in the sauce, but that was almost equally as powerful initially. The biotech pops initially right with the internet stocks. They all kind of popped initially at the same time, changing the world. And but that came a little bit later. When I first got there, it was still, that's sort of what they used to call the Nifty 50. The top big 50 companies. Relatively boring, but still, Now, the firm I worked for, because it was a boutique firm, had certain stocks that they had in inventory. So if you bought them, you make more money because they had them in inventory. But they were higher risk stocks. So my first full month in the business, I opened more new accounts than anybody else.
Wow.
But I didn't sell any in-house stocks. I was opening people on a company called Burroughs Wellcome, which I read about, and they had this new drug to fight this new disease called AIDS. And the new drug was called AZT, and it was very promising. So I opened all of these new accounts. I brought in so much money, and I had the smallest paycheck.
Wow. It always ends up that way, though.
Yeah, it was kind of bad. So I ended up selling a lot of the house crap, which I ended up regretting. But I was able to have my epiphany early on about what Wall Street really was, because I have romanticized it as growing up. Like, I would go home, I would do research, I would find great opportunities for investors when, the brokerage side of it was really just a glorified salesperson.
Yeah.
And the more crap you sold, the more money you made. So I got disenchanted with that after a few years, and that's when I decided to start my own research firm.
Wow. So you totally kind of stepped out of that. You weren't kind of with the ethics of Wall Street anymore, because I hate to relate it, but, watching The Wolf of Wall Street, right? That's kind of like the message they gave off was you kind of have to just sell, shove something down someone's throat, and then you make more money and we profit because of commissions, A, B, and C. And wow. So how old were you when you left and decided to do your own research firm? How did you even start your firm to begin with?
I was in my late 20s.
Still young.
Same story. We had the Wolf of Wall Street stuff was 100% true, all of it. And we had those parties, and I mean, that was the office atmosphere. It was just crazy. I mean, I was in the business 2 weeks when the office got their checks, and these guys say, "Oh, come hang with us." They had the limo, they had the cocaine, they had the alcohol. I didn't mess around with I never did any drugs or anything like that, but I did tell them, listen, you got to drive me around my neighborhood so people can see me in this limo.
Just show off a little slight
flex.
Yeah,
I didn't have a nickel. I didn't have two nickels to rub together. But I'm talking all this smack out the roof of the window. Yo, what up, B? Look at me. Yeah, didn't have nothing. So, I decided, it was the same thing. I had about 10 grand. I used an apartment in Harlem for an office. Again, this was in the crack era. So it was in a brownstone that's probably worth $10 million now. I probably could have bought it for 50 grand, the whole damn building. But, so it was in a crack era. Everything was cheap. So I got this apartment, one bedroom kind of apartment. And I said, I'm going to use one front part of the house, apartment for like the salespeople, and the back would be like, research. I had these lofty dreams. It was just me. And I did the research at night, and I did the product. I wrote the product at night, and then I sold it in the daytime myself. And back then there was a directory called the Red Book. It was huge, just gigantic book with a red cover. And it had every brokerage office in America.
Oh.
So I used that to prospect. So I would call prospect brokers with the Red Book in the daytime, and I would write do the product at night.
Was that like the yellow book? Like I remember when I was young, there was like a big yellow book with everybody's phone number in it. Is that basically like the same thing?
It could have been similar to that. The one I had was the Red Book. It was huge. It was amazing. So
wow.
And because what I found out early on is that a lot of brokers were disenchanted, with the system, which eventually people got hip to. They busted these Wall Street firms and the fake research that was only there to support companies they took public. Some people went to jail. They had what they called the Wall Street settlement. So a lot of people became hip to what was going on. But a lot of brokers, I was shocked at how many brokers felt the same way I did. So I would call these offices and speak to a broker. Like every time you would call an office, for the most part, what they did was they have a broker of the day. So that when people called in, they would transfer the phone call to the broker, and that would be the broker's chance to get new accounts. So I would call the office and say, I'm looking for a broker. And they say, hold on. And they send you to the broker of the day. And then you get on the phone and you make your pitch. And so I just did that. And, just a few bucks came in here and there, here and there, here and there. And, I just kept kind of doing that. So eventually I got a chance to move the office to Wall Street and slowly but surely build it up.
And that is a grind going, from a 1-bedroom apartment to Wall Street with your firm. How long were you with your firm? Does your firm still exist before you came? So how did you transition out of your firm to kind of doing stocks and are you doing Fox Business? And are you still involved in your firm or?
Yeah. I'm the CEO and I'm the main analyst. I do research. When you and I finish with this, I'll probably do another 4 hours of research tonight.
Wow. Your work ethic is incredible. Just wanted to let you know.
Yeah, and nobody's going to outwork me. That's for sure.
It's beautiful.
So anyway, my business, it was sort of, it was the grind. And the Wall Street office was not glamorous. So don't let me fool you. Don't be fooled. It was like awful down there. It was, Wall Street has started to fall apart a little bit. They had some issues. It was as bad as New York City. New York City was just awful. So anyway, the office space was real cheap. So, you had one person, hired another person, keep it going. So I finally got a little bit of a groove, started to get a little traction and starting to make a name for myself and, making a little bit of money now. And then one day the phone rings and it's CNBC. Somehow they heard about me and they were like, hey, you want to come in later on today and come on the network? I was like, yeah.
Nice.
So it's so funny because that day I was like, oh my goodness. I left my office and I went to the spot where I used to buy most of my clothes, a store called Sciabonato. So I get to Sciabonato and there's about 200 people outside the store. Like, what the hell is going on? I weave my way through and it's, I get to the door, everything is glass, the doors, the windows, whatever. And I look in and there's Mike Tyson. And there's like Mike Tyson in his prime. So I knock on the door and my man opens up and lets me in. I'm like, yo, I'm going on CNBC. I need a new shirt and tie, man. He said, all right, hold on right here. So now all of a sudden, because they had kicked everyone out the store, right? It was just Mike Tyson.
Yeah.
So now Mike Tyson is like, well, who's this dude? So he and I spoke for about 35 minutes.
Nice.
And I never really rooted for Mike Tyson up to that point. I really, it was amazing. I don't know why this was so, like, I believe in like, I'm a, big believer in God. I have a lot of faith and I believe things happen for a reason. And, seriously, right on the cusp of me doing my first TV appearance, I run into the biggest sports star in the world. And we're talking about everything.
Wow.
And I was in the back trying on shirts, and then he was leaving. I said, all right, take it easy, Mike. And this is a big store. So he turns around from the front door. He walks all the way back to where I am by the dressing room. So I went to shake his hand, and he hugged me.
Oh, that's so sweet.
Yeah, I felt so bad for him. I felt that people were using the hell out of him. So like I just felt like this was not the person, the evil person that I always thought he was, or he was portrayed to be.
Yep.
He had a beautiful heart. He grew up in the roughest kind of conditions. I'm not condoning everything he's done or everything I've ever done, to be honest with you, but he was a beautiful person. It was just so amazing to have that moment just a couple hours before going on CNBC, So anyway, I started doing CNBC and, I was really doing better and better and they were asking for me more and more. And it was great because I get back to the office and the phone's ringing off the hook, Yeah. So, I mean, business shot up. It was just a pretty great time.
I mean, going on. So you were just a guest, like just that they kind of like a contributor almost that came on every so
I
often.
wasn't a paid contributor. They just would call me up, but they were starting to call me like every other week, and they were calling me very frequently.
Wow. And then how did you
Yeah.
end up at Fox?
Well, at CNBC, Neil Cavuto was there initially, and
Wow. I
then
noticed a
Neil
lot.
left. Yeah, Neil left. He went to this
Yeah.
thing called Fox. They were just starting it up, and I'm like, oh boy, did this boy mess up? Oh man. I was like, what? They said, yeah, you heard Neil went to Fox. I said, what the hell is wrong with him? What the hell is he thinking about? What the hell is a Fox? I mean, who knew? Who knew? It was a startup. It was like, CNBC was the hottest network in the world. The stock market was hot. It was groovy. All the stuff we just talked about, that was happening, right? The internet boom, the tech bubble. Oh, who the hell would leave that to go to, what is the name of it again? A Fox? I'm like, what the hell? So one day I get a call, Fox. Oh boy. Yeah, they want you to come and do the Neil Cavuto show. I'm like, yeah, you gotta be kidding. I said, all right, what the hell? So I go, I get to the building, I go down to the basement. The lighting is bad. The table's got 3 legs. I'm holding one part of the table up with my knee. I'm looking over at Neil like, oh my man, you blew it. You're a nice guy, but you blew it. So of course he hadn't blown it, but he had some amazing foresight to see this. Golly. So so I started doing, I was doing CNN. They had a financial channel called CNN FN. I was doing Bloomberg Radio on CNBC, and then I started doing Fox News. Before they even had a business channel. So
wow, you were market viral.
Yeah, and then eventually, Fox News made me an offer to be a contributor, a paid contributor, and so I took that, and I stopped on the other networks.
And when did you finally get pitched to do your own show? And what I know you mentioned on your show and in previous interviews that your show isn't quite where you want it to be today, but it's getting there, right? So how did your show originally start out, and where do you maybe envision it being down the road, or how have you progressed in it?
I'm not a really kind of like, I don't know if I ever made the presentation per se. I kind of always made sure though that management knew like, hey, if there's a chance I'd like to have a show, but I never pressed per se for it.
Yeah.
And it was so weird. I found out through the weirdest way. There was some people were talking and someone mentioned, yeah, Charles' show is going to start soon. I didn't even know. And I was like, huh?
That's hilarious.
I know. What the hell is going on? Excuse me.
You're all good.
So anyway, yeah, we were in the green room and there were some people that somebody had said something, like, huh? Oh, okay. I had no idea. So initially, the show, it was at 6:00, my show. And, I was, started off, hey, I'm going to look under the hood, yada, 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 yada. We just couldn't get any traction. The network could not get any traction, to be quite frank with you. It was really tough. And, we really started to pick up a lot of traction during the election. And, I think Lou Dobbs really was the man, he went #MAGA right out the gate. I didn't even know what that meant. Like, damn, all I knew was that people loved it. All of a sudden Lou's ratings went through the roof, and so did everybody else. It's like he was a rocket ship. He pulled everybody with him. And so, we were getting these crazy numbers, crazy ratings. And at that time I was like, gosh, we should probably now really use these ratings, to also work on our bona fides, in terms of markets and stuff like that. But, I didn't get a lot of support on that per se. I ended up getting a compromise, and like, okay, well, they didn't believe that anybody wanted to know about markets at 6. So I said, okay, I moved the show to 2:00. I took the 2:00 spot, which is probably the worst time to be on TV. But I was thinking to myself, hell, if I could just kind of do the show I want to do, I'll do the midnight spot, right? So.
Exactly.
But it still wasn't what I wanted to do, and I didn't really have the team or the support, and It was really bad. It was bad for me, rather, and the overall numbers started fading a little bit. And for me, what was frustrating is in 2018 is when CNBC's numbers really came on strong again. Because if you remember 2018, the Fed hiked rates 4 times. The market really started to fall apart, particularly in that fourth quarter.
Yep.
So fourth quarter 2018, as the market fell apart, CNBC's numbers went up because people equated, well, I'm worried about my 401k. I'm going to go to CNBC.
Yep.
And that really pissed me off, and I was like, pissed. I was telling everyone around, I think, we had an opportunity to show people, like, when the market is falling apart, you can trust us. We can do this.
Yes.
And
Absolutely.
so anyway, we've got new management at the Business Channel over the last couple of years, and she's been wonderful. I know I've worked hard to be able to, make the show what I wanted. Some of the things that I do now that rate very well, I was told before that nobody wanted to see it. But the thing is, I know these investors, right? I've been working with investors for 30 years, more than 30 years. 1985, 86. I mean, give me a break. I remember one time in my firm, this woman, I don't know what happened. She knew a friend of a friend or something, and somebody left her stock certificate, and she came to the office, and I showed her how to, to get the money for it, and and she had never been in the markets before. I didn't try to force her into the markets, but we talked about it. Like, I've talked to every single person about every single particular angle of why someone is in the market or not in the market. I've seen every single mistake. I've made most of them myself. And I just know how people think because I've been dealing with them hands-on for decades. And so, like, I'm like an amazing resource. If you really, truly want to know the markets, I'm your man. There's no one, and I'm not trying to blow smoke, but there's no one who can beat me there or at CNBC, to be quite honest with you. I don't go around bragging or that stuff because it's a very humbling business.
Yeah.
You're going to be wrong a lot, no matter who you are. In fact, one of the frustrating things, to be honest with you, about doing the show as a host is a lot of people have gotten into this notion that, they're going to go on and give these cute answers so that when they come back, they can say they were right. In other words, hey, I'm long and short. Remember I told you I was short? Yeah, you were also long, and
everything in between.
Yeah. And I'm not trying to diss anyone, but I call it the Jim Cramer effect. It's like you gotta be right, and and it's so short-termism. It's so short-sighted. And the reason I get frustrated with it because they're not helping the audience.
That is true.
Like if you've got something that you believe in, one of the first rules in investing, people always say one of the first axioms is buy low, sell high. So when the market is erupting and it's high and it's making new highs and everyone's bullish, you're like, okay. It hits a bump in the road and it's down, and now the same people who are bullish are bearish. Like, I thought the pros would be the other way around, right? Be a little bit more skeptical at the all-time highs and a little bit more opportunistic and hungry on the way down, saying, hey, listen, we're not picking the bottom, but, XYZ is inexpensive. We all know from experience that cheap doesn't mean it's a buy today. There's a difference between cheap and inexpensive, but I'd rather buy a little bit too early than assume I'm going to somehow pick the exact bottom because, I know so many people over the years who okay, I'm going to do it. And then when it turns around and starts to go up, well, if it goes back down and it doesn't go back down, there's a point. And so people miss those opportunities. But that's the more frustrating part about the job right now is just trying, just come on. Give me an answer based on your work, and those are the guests that I've been looking for. I'm looking for guests and people who roll up their sleeves. My 5 criteria for guests begins with people who write a lot. Number one, I like to see people who, I want to see your homework.
Yes.
Because it's easy to come on TV and say I'm bullish or bearish.
Exactly. Yeah. Well,
but if you can tell me why. And you don't have to be right. Just tell me why. Tell us why. And then people who are highly regarded by their peers, I think is important. People who develop a following of their own, I think it's important. People who are accountable. It's okay to say I messed up because you're gonna mess up. And the people who are never wrong, I do have some people, man, they're never wrong. I got out at the top and I picked the bottom. I'm like, oh God, yeah, I know.
That's the
Pete,
best.
I remember.
That's the best.
Yeah, but anyway, everyone's trying to sell, and that's how you sell.
Yeah, of course, on both sides. Like, even in crypto, there's a bunch of people like, when Bitcoin was running up that had laser eyes, we're going to 100K. And then all of a sudden, all the laser eyes went away and all the bulls are now bears. And they're like, oh, we're going to 8K Bitcoin now. And everyone's on the same side. Well, we see this a lot. We see a lot of guessing. We see a lot of speculation on both ends. And again, what I really like about your show, I know I said this to you earlier, is that you're so human and you're willing to bring on these thought leaders and people that really are making a difference and maybe don't always get that recognition on other channels or don't get that platform.
Right.
So really hats off for you for doing that. And I have a lot of respect for what you do and that you speak the truth. And going and dealing with this whole market, you've seen highs, you've seen lows, you've seen, possible recessions. Do you think we're in a recession now? And for people or younger people that may be watching this, can you define what a recession is?
Well, that's a big question, right? What's a recession? Before, it was just kind of commonly, accepted that back-to-back quarters of negative growth was a recession. You have this group, the National Bureau of Economic Research, NBER, I think is the one. And they sort of have become the de facto time stampers of the business cycle. Now, no one's ever made them, that's not their official, it's not like, there's been some congressional act and that, they're given this job, but over time, they've sort of become the de facto ones who've done it, and everyone sort of accepted their explanation for it. And it's 8 people. I went over the list earlier this year, the 8 people involved, and I don't know. Some new Keynesians, some employment. Just the kind of economists that they are. I'm not sure. There was only one really conservative guy on there, one guy who backed the Reagan tax cuts. So that tells you how old he is. But I think now, that recession, honestly, is one of those things where, because we live in such a bifurcated economy, that it's really an individual thing. I think a big sliver, anywhere from 30 to 50% of Americans would say we're in a recession right now because they're in a recession. Their lives are in a recession. And I think, a lot of times some people come across on financial TV way too arrogant. And the ones that, listen, a lot of these folks, I love them. I really do dig them, but they just don't know how arrogant they sound when they're like, the country is okay. There's 1.9 trillion in excess savings. I never even heard of excess savings. What the hell is an excess savings? Like, I barely got savings. What the hell is excess? Like,
Literally,
people got excess savings. What kind of people are those? Like, damn. But you say, okay, let's take that premise. But you dive inside that 1.9 trillion, and the top 10% got 1.8 trillion. So, it's like you sound pretty arrogant when you start talking in these numbers and floating them around as if somehow all the money out there is evenly distributed, all the opportunities are evenly distributed. It's not. And people, so I think the vast majority of Americans, unfortunately, are paying a heavy price. The STEMI money is going away. People have gotten raises, but they haven't been able to keep up with inflation. And now you're dealing with this recession, which again, I think, recession is in the eyes of the beholder and the wallets of the beholder. And so, we'll be in an official recession soon enough. I don't know when they're going to timestamp it. Usually they do it long after it's over.
Probably.
No, they do. They do it all the time. Long after it's over, they timestamp it because they need to get all the data. Then they need all the revised data, and then they do whatever, they do their work on it. But it's often the recession is over by the time they say, okay, recession began. Like they'll timestamp it.
That's wild. That's crazy to me. And didn't they
Yeah.
change the definition of a recession recently? And it's all very confusing, and it's just a gray area now. When I think like maybe it's just they don't want to outright say it's a recession, so the market doesn't flip and people don't lose their
Yeah.
noodle. Like,
Well, I hate to say it, but some of it's political. Some of it depends
absolutely,
on
of
who's in
course.
office. I mean, I hate, I think if Trump was in office, a lot of people, a lot of networks would be saying we're in recession right now. You know what's really bad about that? That these same people are doing a disservice by not telling the truth, not just about recession, but about anything.
Yep.
By trying to sugarcoat it, you're just making it worse, and you sound disingenuous. You put it out there, no matter who's the president, no matter what party you might favor, and you really have to do that anyway as an investor. You got to take off. I had a radio show at a station called KFI in California.
Oh, wow.
#1 radio station in America, and a large conservative audience, Orange County. And Obama had just gotten elected. And they were calling in. Oh my God, they were calling in. I'm never buying another stock. I'm like, are you nuts?
What a joke.
I'm like, how the hell would I let whoever it is and President of the United States stop me from making money? Are you nuts? And you have people who did that, with Trump. And now you have people doing that again with Biden. Now, listen, if you told me you were concerned about certain policies that would affect the market, that's one thing. But the knee-jerk say, I'm not just going to do this or that because of who's the president. Listen, you got to live your life and your responsibility. And for the most part, most of us are responsible for others at some point in our lives, whether it's family, friends, neighbors, society, the community, whatever it is. You want to do better. You want to be able to help the surroundings, those around you, do better. So, I mean, listen, I'm a very political person. I have really strong views, but I don't let that get in my way of me when it comes to analyzing the overall market of the market. Now, there are times when I see policy. I'm not a high tax person. I think regulations hurts, particularly, these excessive regulations.
Really?
So, but those I think are two different things than just knee jerk saying, hey, so-and-so's in the White House, so I'm never buying another stock.
That's ridiculous. Honestly, politics annoys me with what's going on right now. How, like, everyone's just choosing a side, and it's like one side won't say something about this, and one side's going to talk about the other thing. It's just bothersome. And you know what? A bipartisan thing is Bitcoin. Bitcoin is a bipartisan issue. And I've actually seen people on both sides of the aisle say we need Bitcoin. And, a lot of people, again, like are looking for a hedge against inflation. They're looking for a way out where, us, the people, could be more in control of our assets. And now people are flocking to Bitcoin. And do you attribute, social media to the shift in markets, whether that's, Bitcoin becoming popular, meme stocks becoming a big thing in the markets?
Oh, no doubt about it. I think like the Reddit platforms have played a big role.
Absolutely.
Online chats, social media. What I love about it too is that, and this is where I think the mainstream media, financial media, has been wrong from the very beginning, is the assumption that these are dumb people, the dumb money.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you.
It's like, have you ever looked at the research they're doing? Like, I mean, give me a break. People who actually just come into office, don't do any research and simply read the teleprompter, calling other people dumb, who actually spend all weekend with their friends, going over numbers, crunching, and a lot of it's learning on the job. A lot of people are learning, but the operative word there is that they're learning, and that they're trying to learn, and they want to learn, and they want knowledge, and they're putting in the time, and you can't knock that. But I think there's something inherent that cuts across political parties that many people sense or feel but can't put a finger on with respect to something isn't right? I mean, with these governments and, we give this political party a chance for a few years and this one a chance for a few years. Something is going wrong. Something is profoundly wrong. And people sense that, so they're eager to find something else. Now, the powers that be are also, though, at the same time, working overtime to hijack the movement. I don't know if you saw this weekend, SWIFT, which is the, where all the money goes and all the transactions around the world go to settle. They're now working on some pilot programs with central bank cryptocurrency.
Yes. Not a
And
fan. Not a fan.
yeah, yeah. Well, they want to. The idea is to usurp this whole movement, and instead of Bitcoin or Ethereum or whatever, it would be the Chinese yuan, the crypto, the dollar crypto, the euro crypto, and they're working feverishly. And there's two ways they're going to try to do it. One, they'll try to compete and advertise the benefits of it. Two, they're going to erect rules and laws to trip up the decentralized financial revolution. And that's why I tell my guests all the time, my crypto guests, be careful. Yeah, you want some rules for the road. I did a piece the other day with Haley Lennon, right?
That was a great interview.
Yeah, thank you. And there was a whole month that went by with 12,000 cryptos didn't trade at all.
Yep.
So yeah, there's been a lot of cases of fraud and those kind of things are going to happen. There's a little bit of an element of the Wild West. So you want some rules, but you got to be careful not to open the door, the Trojan horse thing. You say, hey, come on in, SEC, come on in, whoever, and help us regulate this. And next thing you know, they're regulating everything. They're crushing everything. They're stopping everything from growing. They're discouraging people from investing because that's their true motivation. They don't want to help. They want to destroy it. It's a cookbook. You got to watch this, an old Twilight Zone joke right there, but it's a cookbook. So yeah, be very careful. I always tell my crypto friends, because I think this is it. I think you might have found the solution, and they ain't giving up all that money and power. They're not going to give it up, not freely.
It's going to be a hell of a fight. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
Like this is even.
They need young teen warriors. You know any?
Yeah, I mean, hello. Hi, Charles. How are you? My name's Randy. It's nice to meet you. I mean, man, I've been saying this for a long time. Even my friend Phil in the chat, regulation stifles innovation. I mean, as a younger person, I want a technology like this. I mean, the same way people talk about the internet back in the days, how they talk about crypto now, like, why would you use this? Why A, B, and C? Blah, blah, blah. FUD. It's okay. We're all going to make it. This is a revolution that nobody could stop. At the end of the day, it's code. You cannot stop code. You cannot stop new blockchains from being created, people transacting on them. And of course, some people want regulation and in some areas that could be okay. But at the same time, it's all FUD and you can't stop Bitcoin. Like that's why I'm so bullish on this space. I am worried about CBDCs. I'll give you that. I mean, it's not something that I would want at all. I think, they would come out and give incentives. Like we've seen incentives for different things in the past. Like, oh, you'll get a discount here or you'll get a free donut or whatever if you use a central bank digital currency. I'm not looking forward to that. But I mean, wow, we are a part of a big, big revolution here. And I'm happy that you're talking about it, Charles. I'm happy that you're, giving people like myself, Haley, Leia, like a bunch of people in the crypto space, the platform to talk about this. How do you feel about crypto now? Do you think, adoption will get further in the future?
Yeah, I do. I think it will. The only thing that I'm concerned about is, what happens with these governments that have to circle the wagons around their fiat currencies and the trillions of dollars of debt that they built on top of them, and the flimsiness. You can almost call them a Potemkin villages, right? So, but I do believe that the whole blockchain and the answer for a lot of things. And it just may take longer. Sometimes these things take longer. The adoption phase takes longer, particularly when it's this revolutionary. But I think it's on its way.
Yeah, I agree. It's so great watching the revolution happen. I mean, in November 2020, I started minting NFTs before they were cool. No one was doing it. Now NFTs are everywhere, and it's now catching the attention of the SEC, going after Yuga Labs today, I heard. But again, could be another piece of FUD. But, we are a part of a revolution, and it going this far in such a short amount of time, like you said, there's gonna be pushback there. But Charles, I thank you a lot for coming and hanging out with me. I know I've had you here for almost an hour, and I want to respect your time, especially because you're not feeling well today. What is one thing that you would like to leave the audience with? It could be a message about, food or life, the markets, positive vibes, whatever you want. What's on your heart, and where can we find you and watch you every day?
Well, the most important thing I think for everyone is to have dreams and never give them up. Really, just have them. And no one can tell you what your dreams can be, and never stop going after them. Also, I say always try to be a student of life, right? Yeah, just always learn. The being able to marvel is one of the great gifts of being a human being. So, of course, I'm on every day on the Fox Business Channel, 2 p.m., Making Money with Charles Payne. I also do commentary every single day. So if you ever want to go to my site, wstreet.com, and I'm just around, I'm sure if you toggle the channels, you'll bump into me somewhere. And I have a book that's out now 2 years, my second book, Unstoppable Prosperity. I'm working on a third. I'm a few months behind, but I'm going to catch up soon.
Wow, you're such an icon, Charles. Please, everybody follow him on Twitter. I put his link to his Twitter in the description and in the live chat.
Right.
I did put wstreet.com in the live chat for anybody that wants to take a look at that. Guys, please watch Fox Business, 2 p.m. Eastern, Monday to Friday. Charles is an amazing host, and you actually wanted to make me learn more about the stock market just because you're so pleasant and you're nice to listen to. And I like how in between commercial breaks, you give us a little do. Like, I vibe with that, Charles. I vibe with you. So
thank you.
Thank you to everything that you do. I really appreciate what revolution you're bringing upon both in the stock market and in crypto. Thank you to everybody in the chat that hung out with us today, guys. We will be back on Friday with another episode of the Miss Teen Crypto Show. Please don't miss it. If you enjoyed this show, please like, subscribe, comment after this is over, and share it with your friends so more people could hear Charles's backstory and how awesome he is. Oh my gosh, you're amazing, Charles. Thank you so much.
You.
Have a great day, everyone. I'll see you soon. And as always, stay zesty. Peace.
See you.
Good morning, crypto Twitter, it's Miss Teen Crypto, spreading crypto with Dr. showing its benefits to my generation. Shout out to all my people, Jesse needs to be included. It's really that simple. We are savage, amazed, boss, zesty, making money at the same time, spread peace. I feel empty if you don't include Gen Z. About to change the world, so y'all better get ready. Miss Teen Crypto, I'm never backing down. I got a wax account. You should check it out. So many NFTs, I think I lost count.